Hey again, YouTube. Finally back with part 2 of my Retroarch on the PSVita setup video. In this video I'll be going over a few mostly aesthetic tweaks for the Retroarch on the Vita, but most of this applies to setting up Retroarch in general on any platform. So in this video I'll be scanning some ROMs into playlists using the built-in databases and DAT files, adding box art, screenshots, and title screens to the playlist display, setting up custom dynamic wallpapers for playlists and various menu items, and making a customized playlist using the favorites list as a template. Then I'll show you how to back up Retroarch cores manually before an upgrade, because the built-in backup system often fails. This can be especially helpful if all but one of the core, for example, works after an upgrade. I've been having issues with the PC Engine cores for a while, so I've been carrying forward an older version that I know works with my system. I'll also briefly show you how to enable video filter effects and new shaders in the experimental GL version of Retroarch. These are very CPU demanding, especially the shaders, but really bring new life to some of the old retro games. The most convenient way to organize ROMs for Retroarch is to follow along with the system naming scheme. You can browse the Retroarch database folder under data/retroarch/database/rdb to see a list of the systems. You can also see the naming convention on the Libretro-Thumbnails page, where we'll be downloading the packs of box art, screenshots, and title screens. Retroarch pulls the thumbnails from a directory named after the playlist. For example, if you scanned in Game Boy ROMs, the associated playlist would be named Nintendo-Gameboy.lpl, and your images would be stored in a subdirectory named Nintendo Game Boy under your thumbnail directory. So if you head over to github.com/libretro-thumbnails/libretro-thumbnails, you'll see a huge list of available artwork under the repos link or by scrolling down the main page. To download an art pack for your chosen system, click the green code link and then select Download Zip. These are packs of very small files, and there could be thousands of them depending on the art pack you download. The most reliable way to transfer the files is to first extract them from the zip, power it on your Vita, take the SD card out, and plug it into a reliable adapter on your PC. After extracting, you'll have 3 folders: named_boxarts, named_titles, and named_snaps. As I mentioned in part 1, your ROMs should ideally be named according to the no intro naming conventions. Otherwise they may not match the scanner, and most important, the art files won't match. The art file names must match the ROM file without any of these funky characters. These can be replaced with an underscore. Once you're done transferring your files, remember to eject or dismount the USB device on Windows if presented with the option. If you transfer the files with the Vita Shell FTP or USB transfer, you may end up with a corrupt file system. Similarly, if the block size on your SD card is too small, you may end up with a corrupt file system. This can often be fixed by repeatedly running checkdisk/f and then the drive letter of your SD card repeatedly until the drive no longer reports errors. But if it keeps happening, it's just backing up your SD card and then reformatting with a larger block size. For some systems like MAME or FB Neo, you may want to add metadata to ensure that your games have the correct titles when scanned in. Browse around github.com/libretro/libretro-database to see what's available. In particular, take a look at the MAME folder under the Metadata folder. The XML files here will add proper titles, years, manufacturers, and dip switch settings for most of the popular MAME games. So here I'm going to go and scan in some NES ROMs. I'm going to use the first option, Scan Directory, which is going to attempt to match the files in the directory against any of the available databases. It's as simple as pointing the scanner to the ROMs directory, in my case, ROMs/Nintendo/Nintendo Entertainment System. This is a ROM set that's been properly named and sorted, so with any luck we should see some thumbnails and box art when browsing the newly created Nintendo NES playlist. Now I'll scan in some arcade ROMs using a metadata file. In this case, it'll be MAME 2003+, so I'll browse to the ROM directory and select it. I'm going to manually specify the system name here, even though it isn't necessary because of the name of the ROM directory. The playlist created by the scanner here is going to be named according to the system name, so it'll generate a playlist named MAME 2003-plus.lpl in the playlist directory. I'm also going to specify the default core, in this case Arcade MAME 2003+, for all the games on this playlist. And under the arcade DAT file option, I'm going to select the metadata file downloaded from the Libretro-Database's GitHub, which in this example is MAME 2003+.xml. Scroll down and select Start Scan. The ROMs will be scanned in with the added metadata to a new playlist called MAME 2003+.lpl. The scan will be pretty quick since the system was specified, meaning that Retroarch isn't going to try to match the ROMs against every database. With a large SD card, you may find yourself carting around a ton of games on the Vita. Retroarch has its built-in Game Explorer, but I tend not to use it very often because it deviates a bit from the Retroarch theme. I like to use the Retroarch playlist to organize games, but there isn't a great way to create customized playlists on console at the moment. So I'll go over what I think might be the easiest method, using the favorites list as a template. The first step, which I forgot to do when preparing the video, is clear your favorites list. The location of the favorites playlist is specified under the directory settings. By default, it lives in the Retroarch base directory as far as I can recall. Either rename your favorites playlist, delete it, or delete the entries via the dialog box within Retroarch before you start. This will just save you time deleting a bunch of text later. Let's get started and make a custom Spider-Man games playlist, for example. I'm going to load up the Game Explorer and do a search for Spider-Man. Each system title is going to show up with a console icon, and you can get more information about the ROM if available by viewing its database entry. Add each game you'd like in your custom playlist to the Retroarch favorites. If you find yourself missing any game artwork and your system is connected to Wi-Fi, you can use the Download Thumbnails option under the game menu to try and fetch any missing artwork from the Libretro repos. Once you're finished adding games, close down Retroarch and load up Vita shell. Browse to your favorites playlist location, which should be in the base Retroarch directory. Copy or move content_favorites.lpl to the playlist directory. Rename the file to whatever will be consistent with how Retroarch is organizing your playlists. For example, I have playlists called Arcade Collection already, and I'd like the Spider-Man playlist to show up before all the other consoles, so I'm going to name it Arcade Collection-Spider-Man. That way it'll show up earlier in the menu with the other playlists. If you only need to edit a few lines of your playlist, you can use something like the text editor Notepad++ on the Vita. If you need to edit a lot, I recommend using a text editor on your PC. Each game entry consists of 6 lines. The path to the ROM, the title, the core path and name if specified, the CRC if matched in a database, and the original database name. Delete any entries you want to get rid of between the sets of curly brackets, but note the comma between each entry. Your custom playlist will behave like any other Retroarch menu, so dynamic backgrounds are an option if your theme supports it. To make a background image, crop any image to 960 by 544 and then save it as a PNG file with the same name as your playlist. Then place the file in the dynamic backgrounds directory specified in the Retroarch directory configuration. As you can see, this wasn't the best choice of backgrounds for the playlist, but you get the idea. I should have chosen a darker background to make the white text more legible, but you can also change the font colors in your configuration if you really want to. In part 1 we went through setting up bezels, so let's see how things come together with the multi-system Spider-Man theme playlist. There are still some tweaks to be done, because as you can see I don't have the aspect ratio properly set to fill the bezel window. But let's ignore that for now, because this is pretty cool. Shader support on the Vita. I'm not sure how this is going to look on YouTube, because the preview and the final render in my editor here look a little different, but the CRT shader looks incredible in person. For shader support, you're going to need to be running the Pigs in a Blanket build of Retroarch. I'm not going to go over installing that particular build, but I will link to the files below if you want to tackle it. To set up shaders on the Pigs in a Blanket build of Retroarch, download the Precompiled shader set from Github. The link is in the description down below. Copy all the files in the CG directory to a directory called Shaders in your Retroarch folder. Next, set your Shaders directory in the directory configuration. Save your Retroarch configuration and then restart. When shaders are found by Retroarch, you'll notice a new shader menu option available in the quick menu after loading a ROM. Select the shader menu and then enable video shaders. Scroll down to load and browse to the CRT-Pi shader in the CRT subdirectory and select it. It'll be loaded and applied automatically. Shader presets are saved a little differently than other options. If you want to save a game preset, content directory preset, or a global shader preset, you'll find it under the Save submenu in the shader menu. They look great, but unfortunately the shaders are really CPU intensive, and on the Vita it'll cause many games to slow to a crawl. If you really want a CRT look, you can try the less demanding Scanlines video filters. I'm not sure if these are included in the main assets pack for RetroArch, so you may need to manually download these from the RetroArch Github. The link is on the screen and in the description down below. Copy these to your filters directory and set it in the directory configuration options the same way as you did with the shaders. Video filters can be applied by opening up the video options menu and scrolling to the video filter option. Here I'll apply the Scanlines 2X filter for a little visual flair. It looks pretty good and there's not too much slowdown, but I really do like that CRT-Pi shader. I try to use that whenever it'll work. Speaking of working, now that most things do, I'd like to keep them that way. I fiddle around with RetroArch a lot, and sometimes things break between versions. I find it helpful to keep backup copies of the cores I know work well for what I'm trying to do. You can create a local backup of the cores by opening up Vita shell. Next, browse to the root of your SD card, and then open up the app directory. Scroll down to the Retro Vita directory. Create new directories to hold your backup copies of the cores and info files. You can copy them anywhere, it doesn't really matter, but remember to keep backup copies of both. I do recommend also backing up your whole SD card to another storage device though, especially if you use Vita shell for file transfers. I think I've rambled enough for this one, and that should give you an idea of what you can do with RetroArch on the Vita. Get at me in the comments box or through the email on the About page if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.